All right, thank you. You may come to order and be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the bailiff has informed me that you have reached a verdict. I would ask the foreman of your jury, have you reached a unanimous verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Bailiff. All right, at this time, Defendant Coleman will please rise. Dylan Coleman, the verdict of the jury reads as follows. We, the jury, find the defendant, Dylan Coleman, guilty of the offense of intoxication assault against Jada Hilburn and assess his punishment at 10 years imprisonment. We, the jury, find the defendant, Dylan Coleman, guilty of the offense of intoxication manslaughter against Giovanni Pimental and sentence him to 20 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. Defendant Wooten, please rise. Verdict reads as follows. We, the jury, find the defendant, Tristan Wooten, guilty of the offense of intoxication assault against Matthew Urbina and assess his punishment at 10 years confinement. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of intoxication assault against Annie Stewart and assess his punishment at 10 years confinement. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of intoxication assault against Riley Cox and assess his punishment at 10 years confinement. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of intoxication manslaughter against Charlie Pickens and assess his punishment at 20 years confinement. And finally, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of the offense of intoxication assault against Jessica Evans and assess his punishment at 20 years confinement. Gentlemen, if you will both please rise at this time. Gentlemen, I am going to follow the sentences of these juries. We're going to talk about what your sentences will be. I take no pleasure in the sentences that I have to hand down against you today. In fact, these sentences, quite frankly, represent the final tragedy in a series of tragic events that were set in motion when you made one seemingly small but significant decision to drink alcohol, take drugs, and then you could get behind the wheel of a vehicle. This is a decision that is made by many people every day, by too many people every day, and many people get away with it. But the reality is that the nature of these offenses is such that when you commit these types of offenses, you take your life and that of the people around you into your own hands. You gambled and you lost. But you aren't the only ones who had to pay here today, gentlemen. While it is true that your lives will be significantly affected, and that of your family, by the prison sentences that you must now serve, the reality is that you took from other families in this room, from other people in this room, the light and the hope of their lives, their children that they held as babies, that they had plans for, and children who had plans for themselves. And that is something they will not get back. Gentlemen, eventually each of you will get out of prison. Each of you will be paroled back into society. The reality is that none of the deceased in this case will be paroled back to life. You have taken them forever. With regard to Mr. Cox, while he is alive, while his parents will continue to have him, they will not have what they had before you made the decisions that you made. They will no longer be able to share his company in the way that they expected, and they cannot expect a life for him that they expected when they brought him into this world. You took that from them as well. So gentlemen, again, I take no pleasure, but at this time, Mr. Coleman, I find that your two sentences should be made consecutive. So I sentence you to 20 years to serve for intoxication manslaughter in the death of Giovanni Pimental. And I stack onto that sentence 10 further years for the intoxication assault against Jada Hilburn, for a total sentence of 30 years. Sir, you may be seated. Mr. Wooten, in your case as well, I believe that the decisions that you made justify stacking the sentences in your case. I sentenced you to 10 years for the assault on Riley Cox, 10 years for the assault on Matthew Urbina, and 10 years for the assault on Annie Stewart. In addition, I sentenced you to 20 years in the manslaughter of Charlie Pickens and 20 years in the manslaughter of Jessica Evans. I order that those sentences be made consecutive for a total sentence of 70 years. Mr. Wooten, you will be in your 50s by the time you are released from prison. And that is just and right, sir. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, at this time your duty as jurors is completed. Mr. Bailiff, if you would excuse the jurors back to the jury room for one last time.
All rise for the jury.
You may be seated. Jailers, this time, you will escort these gentlemen to the courtroom. You may give them the opportunity to spend the last moment with their families before they leave. Ladies and gentlemen, this court is now adjourned. The trial is over, ladies and gentlemen, and we ask you to stay for a few moments. We're going to bring everybody back in. I would just say that this is a scene that is repeated in this courthouse day in and day out, time and time again, not always with deaths, not always with injuries. But I think it's something that you should keep in mind, that driving while intoxicated destroys more lives than those being injured and dead. It destroys the lives of the defendants. We see it day in and day out with people who otherwise make good decisions, people who otherwise would not be in court. They get intoxicated and they make that fatal decision to get behind the wheel of a vehicle. Some of them go to jail, some of them go on probation, some of them go to prison. But I hope that you learn from this experience here today that driving while intoxicated is an earth-shattering decision. Maybe. Every time a drunk driver gets behind the wheel of a vehicle, they take their life into their hands and they take the life of those around them into their hands. Maybe it's a good result, maybe it's a bad result. We don't know. It's a 2,000-pound missile in the hands of a drunk. I hope you've learned something here tonight. At this time, though, I think we're ready. Let's bring all of our enactors back in and their families. All right, y'all be seated, and one last time. Clerk, we have announcements?
Yes.
Come on up.
We're going to give the students just a second to our victims said when they were standing out in the hall after this was our victims said after, when they were standing out in the hall after this was all over, the first thing they wanted to do was go hug them. So we gave them a minute to do that. This has been, I think, a very, very emotional end to 3 very difficult days for all of us. It has been incredible to see the way everyone has done their part, from the students to the parents to the volunteers, to everyone that was involved tonight in the courtroom. Thank you all so much. One of the things we're going to do tonight, in the past, this has always just ended and everybody has gone their own way. And Sharon was talking today about the fact she felt that wasn't perhaps the best thing to do. So we at least have some iced tea and cookies and some things out there. So you're welcome to stand around a minute. Please, please take a minute and hug each other, hug everyone. As we all know, this was not real. I know for you too, it has to feel just unbelievably real. Thank you for your courage. Thank you so much for your courage in doing this. We've all learned so much from you. But take a minute and go out and have some cookies and punch and hug them. Hug us and hug each other, because as we said, at least for today, our dreams are not shattered. Thank you very much.
All right, let's adjourn to the hallway.